Oh, I sound incredible. Taking a sip of water, singing my pre-show song.
You love that water. How many of those do you drink every day?
Like 3 or 4.
You're getting mad hydrated.
You're listening to Come At Me Show.
Rating champ.
Tim Keck.
Timothy Keck. You're listening to
Come at me show.
Come At Me Show. In basketball shorts.
Come At Me Show.
Did we say the show was good?
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the post-debate pod. Had a lot of banter already. We'll see if that stays in.
Leave it in, Tim. Leave it in.
Leave
It's
it
all
in.
gold.
Wow. We just got done watching the second and final presidential debate. So you know what that means. Your boy Tim is back with his boy Patrick. How do you prefer to go by?
You ask me this every time we do this. You call me whatever you want.
We're also close friends. And I always get a kick out of asking close friends how they would like their name to be said. Boy, oh boy, we talked hydration before this. Pat has never given blood. I think that's a huge indictment of him.
Wow.
But other than that, he's a stand-up guy with a lot of
blood
political
tomorrow.
knowledge. Excited. Pat's going to donate blood when we see Trump's tax returns.
The day we see his tax returns. I'll get blood.
Yeah. Okay. So normally I like to sleep on these things, Pat, because you know me. I'm an even-keeled individual, and I like to sit back and think about what happened.
Right.
And every time I have to make a decision, I sleep on it, baby. But nobody wants to listen to this on a Friday night. So
Let's get it out there.
So we're
Friday
doing it
morning.
now, and hopefully Friday morning, bright and early, they'll be like, hey, what did people think about the debate? I want some off the cuff, some straight shooter, some gunslinging, hot takes from my boys, Tim and Patrick. So I feel less prepared. I feel like things are going to go in and out, but I got to say in general, the debate, I feel like it went better than I think it's pretty safe to say it went better than the first one.
It's very safe to say that.
The first one was a complete disaster and abomination, but this one was boring, which is probably why it was a good debate, because it definitely got boring.
Yeah, definitely boring. I think that number one, Kristen Welker, I think did a fantastic job.
She's great.
She shut them down in a way that, like, for some reason, she was commanding respect that Chris Wallace did not. And I think it's potentially because she's a woman. It's potentially because after that first debate, there was a lot of backlash about not listening to the moderators. So maybe they took some notes from that and didn't. Also, they muted their mics this time, which I have mixed feelings about, honestly. I feel like it should be a sort of, I honestly feel like Biden campaign shows that, no, don't mute the mics. I have the ability to not talk over someone when they're talking. The other person should also show restraint. And if they cannot, then what are we doing here?
I guess that makes sense. I would say the moderator. I think she did a great job. I think, immediately we're watching MSNBC and they're immediately praising the job she did. And I think she did do a good job. I think Chris Wallace there's no way. I don't think anybody could have done good in the first debate.
No.
And I think Chris Wallace is generally okay, and he's pretty good, and she had more time to prepare and all this stuff. So it's great that she's the moderator and all that stuff. And I think she did a good job. But I just immediately after the debate, Rachel Maddow was like, I think we can all agree the real winner in this debate tonight was the moderator. And I'm like, this is what is happening right now.
Yeah.
A moderator can't win a debate. When we're talking about how good a job the moderator did, I just feel like it's a symptom of how dumb all of this has been.
Right. 100%.
And what a waste of time this has been for everyone.
Yeah. And I just think about, I watched the whole thing. I didn't learn anything new. I didn't Nothing really like made
Well,
me
with
turn
this,
my
when
head.
was the last time you watched a basketball game and you said, "Wow, those refs crushed it tonight"? Those guys
Great
were
call.
great. You're
Great calls on both sides, real fair and even balanced.
You're picking up a ref polo at the end of the night. Your kids dressing up as a ref coming to games. Like all this moderator like worship is crazy. I mean, it's insane. We should be talking about how good the teams played or how good the players were. And I don't know. It's
Well, let's talk about it.
let's talk about it. How do I think they did? I think man, I just every time I watch these debates now, I try to like take a step back and be like, check the things that I know or believe in at the door and just see what people say. And if you're coming in, if somehow you're just landed on planet Earth and you're trying to like figure out who you should vote for, looking at it with fresh eyes and you're watching this debate, it's a bunch of nonsense, man. It's insane. And they spend so much time accusing the other person of something that like you have no idea what's true watching the debate, you know, like
Yeah.
you have to do your own independent research. And that's kind of the crazy world we live in now, where it's like everything's fake news. It's all fake. So now people are going to do their research after this. And some of them are going to go online and find things that agree with what Trump said. And then they're going to be like, oh, this is cool. But then it's going to be some weird underground QAnon shit. Like when people do their research, you can find whatever you're looking for online. If you have an opinion, you can confirm your opinion anywhere you can online nowadays. And when we're treating like some dude's blog the same way we treat the New York Times, like what is truth? What is fact? I just found this whole thing like so confusing.
Yeah, it's also that Trump is speaking specifically, and this is what when I do. I try to do the same thing. I come into it and I check my prejudice at the door. You know, I'm definitely like looking for moments where people are doing a good job. And when Trump comes up there and like I know some of the stuff that he's mentioning, and even I get confused about it because he'll say lines that are like, you know, he'll reference these like really small or just like kind of like weird stories in newspapers that fringe newspapers that no one reads, and just like messages them like everyone knows what he's talking about, but people don't know what he's talking about, and so they Google it. And the thing is, the only people that are reporting on these stories are those right-wing outlets. So you can send people to those places. And I get the strategy there, I guess, but I just don't think that like the people that are still independent are those people who are, I mean, I honestly think the people he has to win over are people that are not internet savvy folks. And maybe that's mean to say, but I think it's older.
It's not even internet savvy as like, I don't know, these people are going to be on like Reddit or 4chan. I don't even know enough about this stuff. This like laptop story is like also kind of crazy where like somebody tried to like hunt, like either Joe Biden,
really
someone in the Biden family had a laptop repaired. But then the person who repaired it realized who it was. And so then they took all the information off of it. And some of it is like these emails, but like there's no way to verify any of this. And now I guess Facebook and Twitter were trying to cover it up because it's like, number one, it's an invasion of privacy. But like, I think the thing I was reading about it was mostly about how it's like pictures of Hunter Biden doing drugs on this like laptop and stuff. And it's like, what is it? What is this? None of this makes any sense. You have one dude who has released his tax returns and one guy who has not released his tax returns. And I feel like that's it, you know?
It's like, I don't really give a crap if Hunter Biden did drugs. I don't care. I'm not voting for him. He's not going to be part of the administration.
Yeah.
He's not going to be part of this. It's his son who maybe made mistakes, maybe didn't. I don't really care. I don't really care what he did. He has no bearing on anything. He's not a public official. I didn't vote for him. I will never vote for him because he's not going to run for any office.
I don't know. In Trump's mindset, he's like, cool, my family members, the children that I gave birth to are like five of the only people in this world who won't turn on me.
Right.
I need to put them in positions of power
Right.
immediately. So he's just looking at Joe Biden going like, well, immediately he's going to put his son in charge charge of defense for this country or whatever. And it's like, nah, dude, my son's going to be in rehab fixing himself. I think, well, I guess we're bouncing all over, but I feel like I'm rattled from this whole thing. The drug convo for Biden, I just feel like is so strong. I just agree with it so much, where he's talking about, I mean, I wish they would come out and just be like, okay, we're legalizing weed, you know? It's legal. There's no reason to address stuff like that. But I love when politicians own shit, and Trump and Biden is coming out and saying, like, these laws we passed, putting people in jail for like minor drug possessions, were terrible. And they were bad. They like fucked up communities for generations. Right. If someone with a kid at home goes to jail because he wanted to smoke pot one day, after like a hard day of work, I'm painting an absurd, not an absurd hypothetical, but I think a realistic hypothetical of a man who is like working 40 hours a week to like take care of his family. He wants to get a little high after work and relax. Now he does 10 years. His son grows up without a father in a community where, you know, you have to work 40 hours a week just to make ends meet. Like,
yeah, we're talking about some of these people who were pulled over for a broken turn signal, a busted taillight, or for doing some minor infraction on the road, and then their cars are searched.
Yeah.
And they find something in the car, and then they go to jail for a mandatory minimum of 5 years. So we're talking about people who maybe not even were using the drugs at the time, but just had them with them. Maybe they're driving home from their job. Long, hard day at
their long, hard job.
And they're just driving home.
CEOs
and they're
of corporations.
tired, and they make they do a weird thing on the road or something. And a cop is watching them because the cops are all over the neighborhood where they're from. And it's just like, yeah, a bunch of people are going to get caught up in a system like that. And you're going to put a bunch of people in prison who don't need to be there.
Especially when like our last 8 presidents they've all smoked pot too, right? Like right. Obama smoked pot, Bill Clinton smoked pot, George Bush smoked pot, like everybody smoked pot. But for some reason it's like, oh, when these poor people of color in communities that we don't care about do it, they should do 10 years. But when I and my white buds do it in college, you know, it's like, oh, cool. We just get a slap on the wrist. Maybe the RA writes us a note or something like that.
Exactly. You know? And that's institutional racism right there. Like plain and simple. You know, it's not hard to see the disparities and what would happen. And I think it's good. Like the best argument to make when someone says, hey, what about this crime bill? You did a bad job with that. And then he goes, yeah, we did. We screwed up. And here's how I'm going to change it. And like, then you're like, wow, okay. He admits that he did something wrong. So that like, you don't go up and deny the reality, because it is a reality. And Democrats do have to work on the messaging around that. And if you accept the reality and then you say how you're going to move forward and change and make amends for what you've done, I think that brings people along.
I love that stuff. And I know in my personal life, that's been something that I've like actively tried to work on too, is just being like, okay, if you make a mistake, you just say, look, I made a mistake, even at like work or something like that. Everyone likes the guy who's just like, okay, yeah, I messed up this thing. How do we fix it? You know, I learned from this. Nobody wants you. If you're just going to be making the same mistake over and over again, everybody would much prefer someone to stand up, say they did it, figure out what went wrong, and figure out how we can fix it. And I want to see that in like my government officials. Like, sorry.
I'm just imagining someone being like, hey, Tim, you messed up these reports. These are all wrong numbers. And you're like, we've had the best numbers. These are the greatest numbers you've ever seen. No one has done the numbers better than I have. There have been incredible numbers, and if you did these numbers, they'd be terrible. They'd be the worst numbers. And like,
my reports are perfect.
That's all he does. It's just like it deflect away and put everything on Joe or someone or anyone else. And I just like, again, coming into this with no prejudice, trying to look at it, I don't see it as a person. If the person is just deflecting away on the other person, I can see how that makes someone feel good about their choice to vote for him, because they're like, okay, the other guy's just as bad, and I want this guy because I agree with maybe some of these minor policies that the Republican platform has. But I don't think it pulls people that were like, well, I voted for Obama and then I voted for Trump, but now I'm like, I don't know, I don't feel good about it. I don't think that they go back to Trump again. I mean, and again, I have no idea. But I do think, and it's interesting, in the beginning of the debate, I don't know how you felt about this. In the beginning of the debate, I thought Trump did a good job because he was going back to talking about the stuff he did in 2016, which is like when he talked his answer on COVID, which is this should have been his answer a long time ago. And I think it's what a lot of the Republican answers is. We need to open up the country. People are suffering. We need to open up the country. We need to open up the country. People's who are losing their jobs. We need to open it up, open it up, open it up. And this guy wants to close it.
Right.
Which is an argument that they're making. It's a massively flawed argument because if you open up, you're killing people and you're potentially prolonging this whole thing. But I don't see Joe Biden or the Democrats having a real answer to that.
Well, there's
question.
pros and cons to both, right? Like if we've talked before about how there's just kind of like these like bullshit. So, I mean, there's these dumb social arguments that make the Republican Party, I think, look kind of foolish, where it's like they're talking about gay marriage and abortion. It's like, we should be past this. Like, let's talk about policy. Like at the root of like conservative philosophy, there are like real arguments to be made about like how a
100%.
government should be run. And I think there is real merit with this COVID thing. There's two choices, right? You try and you shut everything down, or you open everything up. And one way, people are probably going to die. More people will die, but maybe we'll be over this faster and the economy keeps going. Or you shut things down and the economy doesn't do as well, but we save lives. And it depends what's more important to you.
Well, I'll push back on that because I do think that that's the rhetoric that I hear is it's either open or closed, but that's not the case. There is a middle ground, which is opening safely, which is you open up, and then if you reach a threshold, you pull back. And like, it's a evolving thing. It's not an open or close, open or shut. It's like, let's open it and see if it's okay. If it's okay, we keep opening it. And if it gets bad, we close it a little bit and we manage it. And also, like, you can do that. But if you have the messaging around that, you can do that, and that can happen. And also, if everyone wears masks, then you're in really good shape and you can start to like actually mitigate spread. But the problem is you're not pushing basic stuff that's very simple to do, that doesn't cost people a ton of money. They could have sent everybody a mask and we would just all have them day one. And then we would just have one to wear. You know, that doesn't cost people money. It doesn't cost the government anything. These like are.
I mean, Trump's got this military that he's ready to deploy with vaccines, which I'm like very curious to see what that looks like. He's just got tanks rolling down the street, throwing vaccines into people. He's got planes flying overhead, dropping vaccines vials, like tied to little parachutes, like propaganda, like over, like in World War II or whatever, you know?
Yeah.
I just completely blanked. What were we talking about? I was just picturing all these vaccines parachuting out. I agree. I tried to make the issue very black and white, which is one is you close everything, one is you open. But I mean, I think the ultimate thing, it was like, we should have closed everything down immediately, send financial support to the people who needed it, and then opened gradually and safely with some kind of a plan. And I think there is like real discussion of like, is the national government in charge of coming up with like rules and regulations for everybody? And I don't know if they necessarily are, but it would be nice if we had a president who was like, this is what we recommend. We recommend that everybody wear a mask. Please wear a mask. We recommend that everybody social distance. Please social distance. Joe Biden, whether it's like political or not, immediately after this debate, put on a mask. His wife comes up. She's wearing a mask. Donald Trump, no mask. And you can't even say it's a political thing, because he could have put on a mask. He could have had a mask. They could both be putting on masks. This is a man who was diagnosed with COVID and is now walking off stage and by a bunch of people who have been working at this show. Like there's staff there, there are people there. There's a room full of people who came to watch for whatever reason. And he's just still, no mask. I don't need a mask. Just walks off stage. I find it a little insulting, to be honest, but
I think it is insulting. It's insulting to like, and I think that Joe Biden does a good job trying to point this out. And, he did the thing about, he said it again, which is, he shouldn't have said the same thing again, but he said, the dinner table, look who's missing from the dinner table, which I think was good in the first debate. I don't think it hit as well in the second debate because it's the same thing. But I guess if there's a new audience who hasn't heard the first one, then maybe it works. And Trump pounces on it. It's like, look what he's saying here. But it's true. People are literally dead.
Yeah.
Like, the more and more people die, the more and more people are going to be connected in some way to someone who died. And the amount of trauma, collective trauma that the country is going through. I was talking to someone about this the other day about like the trauma of 9/11 we're still living with today. And that was one morning. And it ended.
Right.
The morning was over. You know, this has been, we're coming up on a year of people dying every single day. And we're talking about potentially 400,000 people being dead by the end of the year. It's a staggering number. And it is a number that if you don't speak to it, you don't speak to the stuff, and you can talk about the stuff like 99% of people recover, or these numbers that I don't know where they're getting them. And it is true that people do recover, but it's also true that people die. And it's not acceptable. And I think that's got to be the.
It's a harder number to find, though. It's just, I mean, like, not to sound super flippant with it, but I mean, if there's a disaster or a singular event that causes the deaths of a bunch of people, that is a very like simple thing for people to understand.
Yeah.
There is one event. This is the result.
Mm-hmm.
It's cut and dry. And the idea that this is happening all over the place and that there are no hard and fast rules on when it's going to stop. There's no singular bad guy. There's no end date in sight. I think it makes it like very confusing and complicated for everybody. And then even now, I mean, states are opening, states are closed. I don't know what's going on. I know Florida opened everything and it seems like things are going okay, but the numbers are going up. But what does that mean? I mean, it's all over the place. And I mean, I now that we've watched like 3 of these debates in a row, I'm convinced that there are no like straight up neutral winners and losers in this debate. Everyone comes in with like their own priorities and the things that are important to you. And if you're someone who has a job in the oil industry and you haven't had any health problems as a result of your oil job, like Donald Trump sounds pretty cool, you know? Yeah. I don't know if if you have a job at a gas company and you have no health concerns, if you want to hear Joe Biden talking about like, we're shifting to solar panel, you know, solar panels everywhere. We're going to rebuild. We're going to tear down buildings and build them back up again. But these ones are going to be prettier and they're going to get better sunlight and the windows are going to be, I don't know what size though. Trump thinks the windows are going to be super small in these skyscrapers, which I think is funny. Like anyone would build like who would rent space? No one would use a skyscraper with a porthole in it like you're underwater in a submarine. You know, it's just crazy stuff. It's
dwarfed by like the real issues of the day. It's like we're really going to argue over how big the windows are going to be in these buildings that no one has any plan to really build at any time in the future. Like, you know, they have all these plans about, you know, getting carbon, you know, neutral by 2023 or 5 or whatever. And I'm like, that's ambitious. Like, good luck trying that. You know, I think we have bigger, you know, that's a huge issue. But the size of the windows on the buildings is like, this doesn't have to be part of a presidential debate. We could probably talk about something else.
You could talk about the buildings on these non-existent skyscrapers,
right,
like the windows on these earlier. And the idea that Biden is upset about fracking because of carbon emissions, I think is also like stupid. I mean, I get that he's doing what he's got to do, but like
100%
he's talking about the problem with fracking is that it creates too much carbon. Like, what are you talking about, Joe? Like, sure, that's definitely a problem, but we're also just pumping chemicals. You're pumping poison into the ground and essentially like killing wildlife and people doing that.
I think it's one of these unsaid, it's like one of these really complicated issues specifically because it affects one state in particular. That is a swing state. That is a huge issue. And I think that Trump tried to goad him on this all night. I mean, like, what about fracking? What about Pennsylvania? What about this? And you would shout out states in particular, like these particular states that are going to be affected by various things he said. That's very strategic. And I get it. That's like what the Republicans have been doing for a long, long time.
Pence went after fracking. He kept bringing up fracking. It's because they really think fracking is like a huge issue.
100%. I mean, it is. They're not wrong. It's because Pennsylvania, back in like the Clinton years, was a strong blue state because of, I guess even before that too, it was a strong blue state because of unions. The Democratic Party was a real like supporter of unions. And so everyone who worked in a union at the plants in Pennsylvania voted Democrat because they wanted to support the union. But as those like industries started to fall apart, people started losing their jobs. And Democrats aren't talking about bringing the jobs back. They're talking about new things and how to like, you know, be better for the environment. And these things that aren't very good for the environment are really problematic. And then,
But they're employers.
right. And then Trump comes in and says, I'm going to bring back all these coal jobs, which he didn't, you know, like I think it's a fantasy. It's a fantasy that he pushes on everybody. Like, we're going to go back to coal. We're going to go back to oil. We're going to go back to all the stuff that is, it's old news. We have better technology now. We have, the future is upon us.
But if you're someone in that
Yes.
place who is either out of a job because, you know, people have been moving away from those industries, or you have a job in that kind of an industry. I mean, if I was Biden or Democrats or in general, like now I would be saying like, you're the first place we're going to go for this stuff. When we're building like whatever batteries or solar panel stuff
Exactly.
or windmill, we're going right to you
We're going to go
guys.
to Pennsylvania and we're going to put these solar factories in Pennsylvania.
And there's jobs. We're going to bring jobs. We're going to bring
100%.
new renewable jobs so you can transition away from that into this. Or if you got let go from those other places, because that's not going to last, like we're taking care of you in the future.
And the thing is,
And I wish that had been said more.
yeah, and the government, like, I guess he tried to say it too. It was like, we have the money. We have money to pump into these industries, which can lower our carbon emissions, make us more safe, make our air cleaner, make our water cleaner, make our energy cleaner, and give people jobs at the same time. It's a win. It's like a huge win to
Yeah.
talk about. And I don't know if the messaging is there on it. I don't feel as strongly.
I
about it.
don't feel strongly enough. I don't feel like Biden's done enough to reach those people. I could be wrong. But even the messaging, like it felt like his defining point on that tonight was like, we have to move into the future. This is like the moral thing to do. And it's like, yeah, everybody's on board for that. Like everybody who is not directly affected by this is on board with that. Me having a job nowhere related to this, I'm on board with like
Right.
whatever sacrifices need to be made to save the environment, because my daily life would not be impacted by that, you know? I don't know. Speaking of like passing the blame, like I'm looking at common trends, which is, you know, nobody wins. It seems like a real strategy has been like attacking on the Republican side, just like attacking these points that I'm not sure make sense. The fracking is one of them. The other one is like Trump just like goes so hard on tonight, like corruption. He's calling like Biden like a corrupt person. And the other one that was huge was the corruption, where all the money is coming from. You're getting paid by other countries, all of these crazy things. And it's so hypocritical for him to say that. I don't know why he's doing that. It seems like they're kind of like there is, how do I put this? I'm trying to process this myself. Is like there seems like there's some unspoken rule between politicians not to point out how corrupt they are, because as soon as one person points the finger, it's like everyone could be pointing fingers. These are all corrupt assholes, you know,
throwing stones from
in a glass house. And for Trump to be complaining about how corrupt Biden is crazy. And I can't believe it's the hill he wants to die on, that like you are getting paid from all these places. And Biden's like, newspapers are publishing articles about like real legitimate newspapers. Real reporters are coming out and exposing like all the sketchy things you've been doing with your money, not to mention all the hotels and things that we can all see. And everyone's just fine with. Like, it's wild that that's his cause.
There are a couple of things I'll say on this. First is that it's definitely a strategy to just muddy the waters of everything. And the idea is that it's not even to get people to vote for Trump. It's to get people to stay home. To paint everybody as corrupt. He doesn't benefit. He benefits from making them both look bad rather than just making Biden look bad. So when you say like him making Biden look corrupt and Biden turning around and saying you're corrupt too, that actually feeds into the narrative I think that he's trying to push, which is that like we're both corrupt. It's a mess. Second thing is the strategy to paint the other person as a corrupt politician is straight for 2016. Like he did it to Hillary Clinton. It's the exact same thing. It just doesn't work as much on Biden for I think a couple of reasons. I think one, that it's just like Hillary was a more polarizing figure. And so people I think were a little bit more willing to hear that. Biden, they see it. They're like, I don't really see the through line. I'm not seeing the corruption there. I mean, there's nothing credible that's come out about Hunter or about anything else. Anything I've heard, it's like, there's just nothing there. There's nothing there that has legs.
And Trump's not an outsider anymore.
Right.
He's a politician now. He's the president. So for him to be coming in and being like, you're a corrupt politician, it's like, Trump, by definition,
Right.
you are also a corrupt politician. I'm not saying Joe isn't. I'm sure Joe's done sketchy stuff, but like Trump is far and away, like he's the embodiment of a corrupt politician now. And that, and then the whole idea of like, Joe, why didn't you do this like 3 years ago? Joe, you had 8 years ago. Joe, you had 8 years to get this stuff done. Why didn't you do it? And it's like, I'm the vice president, man. What do you want me to say? Like, I was the vice president.
Right.
There's only so much I can do. And Trump keeps going. It's like 20 minutes of the debate is him just like yelling, like cutting off the moderator and yelling at Joe. Why didn't you do it, Joe? And then Joe finally says, we had a Republican Congress. And then there's like 10 seconds of like dead silence. Where everybody just sits there. And I was like, that's the coolest thing I've seen all debate. He just like Republican. We had a Republican thing. And then Trump like eventually is like, we got to convince him. And it's like, no, that's the game. The game is there were Republicans in Congress and Obama couldn't do anything he wanted to do.
To block everything. And it was you have to look at the strategy. You have to look at why they did it. They did it because they knew that if they just blocked everything, they just uniformly blocked everything, they could A, block a bunch of stuff from happening. B, they could paint everything as partisan. Everything that Obama pushed, if the Republicans all together voted against it, then everything that Obama passed, even if he had the Senate and the House, looked partisan because Republicans didn't vote for it. And so it was a strategy. It was done on purpose. Like it, and you have to speak to that. You have to speak to, here's what he's talking about. Trump doesn't understand the game because he just got here. I've been here for 47 years. Here's why they did this. Here's what the Republicans in Congress are doing. Here's why you need to vote for me as president and how you need to vote down the ballot for Democrats. Because we need Congress to pass laws. And like you could honestly do a civics lesson. Just sit there and be like, here's how you pass laws. You get them to the House, then they go to the Senate, then I sign the bill. The president signs the bill. You know why President Trump hasn't done anything? Because the Senate blocks everything. Everything that the House does, everything, the money that we put, he said that. He got upset about it at one point. He was like, we passed that earlier this summer. There's money just sitting there. It's just like sitting there ready to go, passed by the House, a bunch of money waiting to go to small businesses. And you have the gall to sit here and say that businesses are failing because of you, because of Joe Biden, who holds no office. He doesn't have any power. It's the thing about China too. He's
Trump's like, why didn't you fix this?
Why
It's
didn't
like,
you fix this?
I'm not in power right now.
I have no, like, what am I?
I have no job.
Nancy Pelosi. Like, I could talk to her, but like, it's not my job. I'm not working.
Don, I count as one of the 10 million unemployed Americans in this country right now.
Get my unemployment check.
I am below the poverty line right now, Donald. I am out here. This is my job application, Don.
I'm just trying to get to work. I've been out of work because of this pandemic, and who knows if the presidency is going to close too.
China hasn't been paying nearly enough for me to keep a roof over me and Jill's head. That's why I'm out here looking for that sweet $500,000 you get every year for being president of the United States.
Shishin, China, shishin.
He just nods and winks at them.
The fake banking out thing is funny too. That is
Trump just has bank accounts everywhere, and he just says, I had it closed, and it's like, I don't know, you just have again, all this stuff worked for Trump, I think, before he was the president, before he's the politician, because before you're like, I was under the impression his whole thing is like, yeah, I'm a politician, I'm good at my job. They're like, why are you overseas? It's like, because the government lets me go overseas. So of course I'm going to do that because I'm a rich man and I can make money exploiting these loopholes. When I get to be the president, I'm going to close them up. And it's like, oh, but you're still doing this stuff. And he's just like, yeah, because the government lets me do it. And it's like, but you're the government. Like, you are the guy now. You're in charge.
Okay,
like, you can't pass the buck anymore.
They treat me so unfairly. The IRS.
There's also, okay.
Are you? I don't know.
This reminds me of two things I wanted to say before. One, the tax returns thing. we're never going to see the tax returns.
No, you're never gonna see
There is absolutely, the little bit of research I've done is that there is absolutely no reason for him to not release the tax. He keeps saying he's being audited. You can release your tax returns when you're being audited.
Yes,
there is.
100% we know that now.
We 100% know that he has no obligation to hide his tax returns. If he wanted them out there, he could 100% share his tax returns.
And we should
There's
be
nothing
clear,
holding him back.
he is under audit. Like, that is a true statement. He's been under audit for 10 years.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to say that he's not under audit. You're not trying to say that either.
No.
What we're saying is that doesn't preclude you from being
Nothing about that prevents
Nothing about
him from releasing that.
Not at all.
That's
why he's changed his message to like, they've advised me to not do it. I'd be stupid to do it. I'd be stupid to do it. So I'm going to wait till it's over. And like, that's the shift, which is like, I can't do it to I shouldn't do it. And then you can hear like these little things here and there where he's like, he'll say, and honestly, like, I don't know if you haven't watched The Vow, but there's those of you out there who've watched The Vow, Keith Raniere does the same thing where he'll say something, but then he'll say the opposite at the same time, but then he'll emphasize the part that he wants you to listen to more. He's like, when he says like, I got COVID, I got really sick. They gave me a therapeutic. Some people call it a therapeutic. Some people call it a cure. It's a cure. It might be a cure. Might be a cure. Maybe I'm cured. Maybe I'm not. Maybe I am. Maybe I'm cured. And like, it's that sort of like language like that he uses where it's like, he's not actually, and then he can come back and be like, you said you were cured. He's like, no, I didn't. And he's right because he didn't say it. But also it's like, if you point out that like what you're saying is misleading on purpose, then you can maybe get through all that stuff. And that's why you can't like say when there's the one moment, I think it was my favorite moment of the whole debate, when he's like, Abraham Lincoln. I didn't say it was Abraham Lincoln.
Right? Why is that the thing you're picking out of this?
I never said it was Abraham Lincoln. It's like, no, dude, that's not what I was making. I was making fun of you, saying you're Abraham Lincoln to explain the joke.
I was mocking you to your face.
I was mocking you and saying Abraham Lincoln over here, air quotes.
Man, I had another great thought in comparison to tax returns, and it's completely gone.
It's ridiculous that we're never going to see it. Also, he's broke. He's literally broke.
Right.
He might be in actual legal trouble and major financial trouble after he leaves the office of the presidency.
Let's talk fashion.
Okay.
What'd you think of the way the guys were dressed tonight? The two gentlemen before us, these two dashing senior citizens. What'd you think of their wardrobe?
I thought both of them were great. I thought both of them looked really good. Honestly, like I do. And I'm big on this stuff. We both agree they had horrible ties the first debate.
The weird stripes. I think it's weird that it seems like they coordinate together. Like before the debate, they sent each other a text like, "What are you wearing? Are you wearing the striped tie tonight?
Don't wear it.
You going solid
don't match
tie?
Me. Don't."
Tonight it looks like they've been buying ties like in 2-packs. I don't know if that's a thing, but when you go up and buy like a Van Heusen shirt and it comes with a tie,
it comes with a Republican.
It seems like
tie.
they both bought like matching, like offsetting colors. Like their ties like kind of matched in opposites the first time, and tonight they were both the same kind of like prom tie. You know what I'm talking about? Where it's like a shiny red and like a shiny blue, like the exact opposites of each other. They were, if Jill was wearing a clashing flower thing at the end, but if she'd come up in like a blue gown, I think it all would have like made sense.
Jill's
like they're trying to match their dates.
The idea that her dress matches her mask, though, that is
Jill brought it.
That is the future of fashion. Like we are going to see that all over the place.
Yeah, man. We've all been talking about how hot Kevin is. Wait, what's Kamala's husband's name? Is it Kevin?
Is it Kevin? No, wait, it's not.
He is like the most generic, like pleasant white man. Doug.
It's Doug.
Doug.
We love Doug.
I can't wait to see Mr. I guess he's not a first. He's the second lady, I guess he'd be. What's the spouse of the VP called? Is it the second?
I think it is actually.
First lady and the second lady is the VP's wife. Why doesn't anybody ever talk about the second lady? I don't know. Why isn't Miss Pence out there doing stuff? Why isn't she stopping bullying?
I'll pause right here to say, like, the amount we talk about vice presidents, and I learned a lot of this from Veep, mostly. They don't have any power. They have like very little power. They have a lot more power to like go out and kind of like push the message. The president usually like gives them a task.
They are like they have more symbolic power. They have about as much power as you can have if the president just appoints somebody to something.
The most power they have is they break ties in the Senate. It's
Right.
like that's probably the biggest thing that they do. Other than that, like,
It's whatever job the president doesn't want.
right. It's exactly that. And, you know, which is why Trump gave Pence COVID.
Oh yeah, that reminds me. That's the other thing I wanted to bring up with these tax returns is we know because reporters have asked Trump's doctors and Trump's staff, when did you get diagnosed with COVID? Did you have it before the first debate? And they have all just said like no comment. No. Trump, I can't report this as a fact, but we know Trump had COVID during the first debate, which is crazy to think about. This dude was on stage, was probably his camp will not come out and say he did not have COVID during that debate.
Seriously, look up, find videos of people being asked this question. They do not answer it. They will not answer when Trump was tested. Even Trump himself during the town hall, he said, I don't know if I was tested. He said, were you tested that day? He said, I don't know. I'm tested a lot. So here's the thing. I think he does know. I think 100% he knows. And I think 100% he knows he was positive. But going into that first debate, they made a choice. And they said, okay, become public about this, you being positive with COVID before the debate. And when the debate doesn't happen, that looks horrible for us.
If he can't show up to the debate because he has COVID, oh,
yes.
that looks so bad.
So
for
they
him.
made a choice and they said, we're going to keep it quiet. We're going to put you out on stage. Right after that, we're going to test you and keep you on close eye. Then we're going to report it that you're positive 2 days later on Sunday. The debate was on Thursday. And so on Sunday, they reported it. On Sunday or
he like went to the hospital
Sunday,
on
we was
Sunday,
at the
right?
hospital, which means
He had
knowing
it
the
before that and
progression of the
got
disease-
sick.
Yes, knowing the progression of the disease, it takes a minute from a positive test to going to the hospital. I mean, he's obviously going to the hospital a little bit before probably anybody else, precautionary. But like when we heard about what was happening in the hospital, they heard about like he's put potentially on oxygen and like had very low oxygen levels. Like all the science point to him being positive for that first debate.
I don't think he was sick then.
No, I don't think
He was
just being
obviously
positive
like
doesn't mean you're sick.
It doesn't mean you're sick.
And also, it could be a false positive. Maybe they thought it was a false positive. They were like, let's take our chances.
There's a lot of stuff they could have done.
They didn't
but
say anything about it.
they said nothing about it. They won't say
Which is
anything
the real
about it
problem.
now. It's weird. It's real sketch. And then he goes to the hospital, and I think it was bad. And then he comes out and he's just doing exactly what I was afraid he would do after like our first like podcast was like, he comes out, he beat it. He's like, it's no big deal. You get it. You beat it. And it's like,
Right.
This is a man that our country did not want to die. You know what I'm saying? Like, he got it. He's the one person in this country where we're going to pull out all the stops medically to make sure this man is all right.
They said his treatment would cost $100,000.
They're not going to do that for everybody. They wouldn't do it for you or me. If we get it, it's like, okay, cool. Someone's going to have to pay for this. Either my insurance will pay for it if you don't have insurance, because also they want to take away your insurance. I mean, this is kind of crazy. That whole thing was wild too, where it's just like, we're going to repeal Obamacare. I was stunned by that number. I'm going to Google that later. Just 20 million people are just going to lose insurance. And Trump's like, we're going to repeal it and do something better. And it's like, but you're not, because that's not what Republicans do. That you don't want to do that. And there's the pros and cons of that, which is like, everyone should fend for themselves. Everyone should pull themselves up by their bootstraps. But you're not about like creating programs to take care of people. That's like exactly what you don't want to do. And so you're repealing this to repeal it and just to not have anybody have insurance.
Exactly. And I think there's the easy shift. There's an easy shift for Joe to be like, hey, remember how you said I didn't do anything for 4 years? You promised to repeal the Affordable Care Act. You haven't done it. You tried to do it a bunch of times and you failed. Failed a bunch of times. You failed to repeal it because people want it, because people like it, and because it is popular, and even in the Senate. And you know, John McCain voted no on tearing it down, and you lost.
Was that his big thumbs down
That was
thing?
his big thumbs down moment.
That was badass.
That was so badass.
I remember
Yeah,
somebody
say what
sent that
John
video to me.
McCain, but like,
Everyone's-
everyone single-handedly shut that nonsense down.
Everyone's arguing. There's like everybody is like arguing, and there's people coming, and he just walks in and just thumbs down. And everyone's like, whoa. It's like, It's not actually exciting. Like describing it like that is way more exciting than the actual video. But for a bunch of stodgy people, he saved people's lives. I mean, he saved 20 million people who are on it right now.
Right.
20 million people have insurance now because John McCain gave a thumbs down to his party. He like went against his party and stuck out his thumb down.
And the reason, and you could just go up there and be like, you failed doing that. So now you're rushing a Supreme Court justice in so she can vote on on the Affordable Care Act next month. That's why you're doing this. You're doing this because you can't do it. You can't do it through the right ways. So you're trying to cheat and get in there and get rid of it any way you can because you can't deal with the fact that we did something that was popular and people liked and you can't get rid of it because people like it.
Yeah, this shit's scary. The whole judge thing has got me freaked out. The more I think about it, like, I don't know. I know there's conservative judges on the Supreme Court now, and they're just actually like kind of liberal on some stuff, like they're not the most conservative people. It seems like because the courts have been stacked conservative for a long time, and they haven't necessarily been voting that way on everything. But just adding another conservative seat on there is just really a bad look, especially when all these things are coming back around and like Congress doesn't want to pass this. The American people want these things. And then just some judge can be like, nah, man, we're done.
Exactly.
We're done. This is illegal. They're just passing laws somehow with all their court rulings. I don't know. I don't want to get too serious and sad on this. Maybe we have, maybe we haven't. I think this has been pretty fun.
Yeah. Was
I was going to say, why don't we wrap this up unless you had something else you wanted to say?
Well, they did. There's another half of the debate which talked about immigration, which I think was probably very sad to talk about. But I do think it was a good moment. I really liked that moment with Joe Biden when he was talking about families and I think getting like riled up. And you could see himself holding himself back. He wanted to call Trump names multiple times. You could see it. He was like, this.
He called him a racist.
Yeah.
Which I thought was kind of crazy.
He wanted to call him a clown. He wanted to call him a fool. Like he wanted to be like this guy over here, and he would pause and hold himself back.
The moments with Joe like pauses and like looks to the sky, like, oh,
it's like,
God,
Lord,
it's so
Lord
funny.
help me. But yeah, just like having him sit there and be like, there are 500 kids right now. We don't know where their parents are. We can't get their parents. We can't get them back to their parents. And then all Trump could say is, who built the cages? It's like. Yeah, you do have to own up to that. You do have to own up to like Obama's record on deportations,
which he doesn't do.
Which is, you got to talk about it. But you didn't separate kids from their families. You didn't do that. That happened under Trump, 100%. So you got to focus on that, which I think he did. And I think you got riled up about it. I think it's a good thing because that is a big and very important issue. I think for a lot of people that might otherwise vote Republican. I'm thinking about people. Evangelicals who are right to life evangelicals who are like the sanctity of life and kids thinking about kids and family.
I don't think that someone who is pro-life is going to like turn their backs on that just because Joe Biden has a heart. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think
there are more and more. I mean, I understand.
Maybe.
I think there are. I mean, I've seen some articles. Maybe it's a few people, a handful of people. I do think it's a convincing argument.
I saw just scrolling through the social and I've seen all these TikToks about like Joe Biden and all this stuff. And one that struck me is interesting on like what we were talking about is it's a clip of Joe talking to, I think it was like the Parkland family. It was victims of the families of the victims of these things. And he's talking to people, he's shaking hands. This is pre-COVID, I believe. And there's a kid there with maybe Down syndrome. But he's on the spectrum because he kind of breaks the social norms and just goes up to Joe and hugs him. And Joe hugs him back, gives him a kiss on the head, and just holds him for like a minute. And then, the end of the video is some dude like crying his eyes out. And that's why I'm voting for Joe Biden, which is maybe the part that I don't buy as much. But it is kind of wild that you don't see that with Trump, and they say you do. And I feel like I've seen videos of it and I don't buy it for some reason. I saw videos of
hug somebody.
I saw some video someone shared of
find a video of Trump hugging someone. I don't think he hugs.
I don't think
he's done it.
I've seen him like at memorials. He was visiting like graves of soldiers, and there was a little kid there wearing his dad's like patches, and he wanted to show Trump like where his dad was buried. And Trump just kind of stands there and he nods and he just says things, but it doesn't feel like warmth. it doesn't, you don't feel the warmth and like genuine compassion for another human being that I've seen in like every president I can remember, Republican and Democrat. You know, like I guess I really was only aware for George Bush, but George Bush I feel like was a very human person. You know,
100% he was.
He felt like one of the guys. He felt like someone you could have a beer with, which maybe to his detriment to some extent, but also like, yeah, I felt like if something bad happened to my family and George Bush knew about it, he'd give me a hug and he'd like try and help me out, you know?
Right.
And you just don't get that vibe from Trump at all. Maybe that's what people like about him, but it's why the idea that Trump cares about human beings at all, I don't buy.
No, he's the first president to not have a dog, I think. It's one of like,
Yeah, right. Isn't
he
that
doesn't have a
nuts?
dog. And I think it's like this one, he doesn't like animals. Like and just like the way he talks, I'm reading a book called The Psychopath Test, rereading it, one of my favorite books ever. And it goes through like this checklist of what you, how people could be labeled with psychopathy.
I heard that, you know, rereading the Psychopath book is a clear sign that you might be.
Yeah, maybe.
3 times you're definitely a psychopath. So after this one, Pat, put it down and don't read it
I'm gonna
again.
take the test. I think I'm going to score better this time.
It's like I got Slytherin. I'm a Gryffindor. I got to keep taking this test. I keep getting diagnosed sociopath. Keep getting put into that house.
But you could see how a sociopath would be successful in business or pseudo successful
Sure.
in business.
Yeah.
Who would, they lie all the time.
Charming.
Grandiose sense of self-worth. Charming. Sexually, what's the word?
Promiscuous.
Promiscuous, I guess. Just callous. And I think one of the best examples is when they have the story about him standing with John Kelly at his son's grave and him turning to John Kelly and saying, "I don't get it."
Right.
He says, "I don't get it." And I think he honestly doesn't. I honestly don't think he does because it takes a certain amount of empathy and understanding to understand human sacrifice. Because on paper, mathematically, it's a lose. It's a person who gave their life, whose life ended for something bigger than themselves.
Especially if you're from like a well-off family or whatever. If your dad's a
You
politician,
have to do it, right.
and you don't have to go to war and you lay down your life for our country,
Right.
it's about the most noble, heroic thing a person can do.
But Trump doesn't understand it.
And it's on paper. It's a
understand that
guy.
Because it's a
Some
plus
dude who coulda-
minuses.
yeah.
It's easy. It's a zero sum. It's like he's dead, I'm alive, I win. And so when he says I don't get it, I really don't think he does. And I think, I'm not trying to say that necessarily makes him a bad person. I think that there's elements of like where you grow up and how you grow up that like can lead to that sort of stuff. But he shouldn't be leading the country if that's the case. He shouldn't be sending people into war or putting other people in danger if he doesn't understand what that actually means.
Right. The value of another person.
Right.
And man, Joe, I guess, I mean, they've both had fascinating backgrounds of like Trump has to, I mean, there's good. You talk about the way he was brought up and like, I don't know if he was necessarily that close with his father. He had like a sister who like says all this awful things about him now. Like he just had a weird,
sort of book.
Yeah, he's just a rich. Oh yeah, the niece.
Yeah, it sounds
He's
like
just got a weird family dynamic. I mean, he grew up as like a spoiled rich brat, and his dad bailed him out some, and maybe wasn't the closest like person to him emotionally. Like
from what I
he had a
understand,
weird
Fred
life.
Trump is a psychopath, is a actual sociopath, and is, I mean,
and Joe's family is like, I mean, it's just so much trauma has hit this guy.
man, yeah.
How he lost his wife and a kid, and then his other son had a brain cancer, and then his other one, I don't know. His other son's going through drug problem. You can't keep track of all.
tragedy.
Yeah.
It's honestly so horrific. And you think about that, and you come out and you see a guy he's connected to his emotions. I think what that moment when I wanted to mention that video where the kid comes up and hugs him.
Yeah.
He asks him, the kid, "Are you okay?" And I think this is a great moment because I think as a kid, I would have just been like, "Yeah, I'm okay." But this kid was like, "No, I'm not okay." And I thought it was just like there was something really powerful in that moment because when someone asks you if you're okay, usually you're like, "Yeah, I'm okay." But like you show them signs of like, "I'm not okay," actually.
Yeah.
This kid was just like, "I'm not okay." You know, this is like they just shot up the school. You know, I don't know his connection to the school, but they shot up the school. I'm not okay. I'm not. And Biden was like, you know what? You know, like, I hear you. I hear what you're saying.
He says you're going to be okay.
You're going to be okay.
And you know what? You believe that from some. How do you not believe that from a man who's experienced more loss in his life
Exactly.
than I don't know, a lot of
I
people?
don't think I don't know anybody else who's experienced the kind of loss he has. And like coming into this moment, he's going to be perfect for this moment because we're talking about the entire country going through trauma.
Yeah.
And what it means to heal means that maybe we should be focused on our emotional, the emotions part, because that can start to bridge the healing, that can sort of calm emotions down. I think that there's a lot of times people think about that we shouldn't bring emotions into things because it clouds thinking and it makes people less productive and it, like, you know, can hide other things. So people like we often think of people who are not emotional as like more powerful or more like reasonable. But I would argue that emotion plays this role that we don't understand fully because there isn't a lot of research about it, that it helps us to calm everything else. If you're being hurt emotionally, you can actually deal with problems outside of your emotion better because you feel like you're being heard as a human being.
Yeah. If you have an issue that is addressed as opposed to repressed, you're more likely to address it and move on than you are to like keep dealing with it and keep feeding that beast, so to speak. Right. Yeah, I feel I feel like I started this being like, we watch these debates and I always try and sit back and be like, as like, you know, I'm clearly incredibly biased and I try and check that at the door and just like who won the debate, who lost the debate, which is, I don't know, keep talking about how that's a dumb thing. And then we're just sitting here talking about like the morality or like who this human being is, you know, and I don't think that's a crazy thing to talk about because I think the biggest problems people have with Trump aren't on paper. It's like the way he talks about things. And even on the first debate, you know, Chris Wallace is like denounce white supremacy. He says stand down, stand by. I think in one of the like weird dueling town halls he did, he actually denounced white supremacy and whatever, but it's like, cool. So now we have a quote of him denouncing white supremacy, but there are still like Proud Boy. There are still white supremacists around the country who think Donald Trump is on their side. And so even if he did denounce it, it's like, but something else you're doing is giving them the wrong idea. It's not like he's passing laws like that somehow benefit white supremacists or whatever necessarily, but just the way he talks and the way he carries himself and the way he responds to questions is super negative and is riling people up and like
he's supporting the police, even those police who are committing violent acts against people of color.
And that's not policy. That's just him
rhetoric.
doing his thing. It's just him talking.
And that's the sort of stuff that is the poison that it's the poison of the original sin of America, which is that it's going to be a much bigger thing than the presidency to deal with. The idea that the president can like stand up there and be like, racism is over today. Like, I think we have to get real that like the president has no power to do that. And we could try, the presidency could try to like mend feelings, but it's going to come from all of us and from the state level and from the like municipal level, and it's going to be very, very difficult to deal with.
Okay. Well,
it's definitely difficult to deal with if you don't acknowledge that it exists.
I agree. Now let's try and wrap it up this time. We're added another 20 minutes to it. No, it's fine. I got a second wind. I'm tired now though. It's late Thursday night. Pat's been drinking. I've been watching him drink. And but I've
been hydrating as
you've been high. Yeah, we were having a long debate about that before. If you're drinking whiskey and water, you're more hydrated than if you just drink whiskey straight. I don't know. That's not relevant. Maybe we'll leave that in as the very beginning of it.
Just make that the podcast.
I feel like they both ended. The debate ended very interesting, which is like kind of an embodiment of both of these dudes or whatever. Maybe what you love or hate about them, right? Trump, rambly, just kind of they're doing the last question. The last thing is just how you're going to address the nation on Inauguration Day and how do you win over the people who didn't vote for you? And Trump just goes into the same kind of I don't think he realized.
He realized it was the last question.
I don't think he realized it was the last question.
It was phrased in a way that was like,
this may be the last question, but also maybe not. And I honestly think he didn't realize it was the last question because he seemed upset after it and be like, oh, I didn't get to do the thing that I was supposed to do at the end.
The tone made it sound like it might be different. The thing that stood me was like, the last question is always something like your first and your day of inauguration.
Right.
It's always something that is like not about policy. It's always just like, here's your chance to just make a statement.
What do you do?
Yeah, exactly. You're king of the world for a day. What do you change? What day of the week is pizza day? Like,
Right,
what
yeah.
happens there?
I wish I'd have more questions like that in the debate.
Yeah, it'd be funny if
Like, what is
more
your
random
favorite
stuff.
color? 2 minutes.
What's your favorite dog? If you could have one pet in the world, what would it be?
Actually, I think that would be a very illuminating question.
I think it'd be pretty chill just to be like, who are these people as these guys as like people? But then, they're like probably running through like focus groups and
Oh, yeah.
stuff. And
well,
well,
the Maltese.
well, actually, the walrus is the best animal. But everyone
I love
resonates with it. No one's intimidated by a guy who loves walruses.
Pro walrus in Pennsylvania. There's all these pro walrus, but he hates walrus. He says he's anti-walrus.
He hates
We all know
walrus.
this.
Neither of us have mustaches. Walrus, great mustache.
Great mustache. I support mustaches. Ohio, I know you love mustaches.
Ohio, the land of mustaches.
We all know. Who's my favorite dog? Michigan is whatever dog is from Michigan. I love it. I love the Michigan dogs. Everything that this state has done is great except for their dumb governor. I hate the governor. Yes.
And so he rambles. Joe, which I think is maybe the charm of Trump too, is like he's off the cuff, he's unconventional.
Right.
He doesn't seem like prepared for these. It feels like he's just speaking his mind. And I feel like a lot of it's bullshit because I've read about him and like have some sort of not a real relationship, but we have a relationship with this guy. We've seen him for 4 years. If you're coming in blind tonight, you're like, I don't know if this is true or not, but he definitely
If
is.
you're coming in blind tonight, then what the fuck have you been doing?
I don't know. Maybe you're right. That's a dumb thing to be saying. But his speaking style is just, he's talking.
Right.
And Joe has these worked out points, and he clearly at the end is going into like his shtick,
And he nailed
it's
it.
compelling and it's tight, and he nails it. And then Trump is sitting there looking like, oh, that's what we were supposed to be doing. I didn't realize that's what was happening tonight.
I thought I was gonna have a chance to like give like you because you just say okay, final thoughts or like here's your final thing.
Right.
I thought it was like one last question, and I was like, oh, this is.
Oh, there's gonna be
The way it
another
was
thing
phrased,
after
I was
this.
like, maybe this is the last question, and then he answered it. I'm like, oh, I don't think Trump feels. Like
Biden was on top of it.
Biden knew,
Biden's
yeah.
ready to go with this thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what you don't like about Biden. Maybe because it's like, this is rehearsed. This is like
Yeah.
the political stuff. This is, somebody wrote
Totally
these
valid.
lines for him.
It's totally valid to think about people saying things like, he's going up there and he's workshopped everything he said. Of course he has.
Yeah.
Of course he has. But like, you have to accept that sort of thing to a certain extent to avoid someone who goes up there and says, I've done more for black people than Abraham Lincoln. Like you got to be like, I don't even know what to do with that. I just like.
Yeah. And he had what is going to be by far the worst soundbite, which I think was unintentional, which is, I think during the kids in cages conversation,
right.
There's a horrible 2 seconds where Joe says those kids are separated from their families and Trump says good over it, which I'm pretty sure he's addressing the moderator, but that's going to be all over the internet.
Definitely an ugly exchange.
Last thing you don't want the word good coming from your mouth anywhere around
everywhere.
Children being separated from their families forever. Man,
It's a horrific tragedy.
yeah. Well, on that horribly sad note, Pat, you feel hydrated? Has the whiskey soda been helping you or not?
I feel alive.
Good.
Vote early, vote often. So I say.
I'm going to vote as many times as I can starting tomorrow.
I'm gonna go to every 50 state.
Yeah, I've bought a bunch of fake IDs. I have. My voting plan is to hit every continental state.
We're gonna road trip. We're gonna vote in every state.
I'm flying out to Hawaii, and then road trip to vote in every state. That's the next. That's the indie film that needs to be made now. Is a group of Robin Hood type characters.
Paid for by what's his face?
Trump's campaign.
No, it was the
Steve Bannon.
Oh, I was thinking no. Not Murdoch, the other guy, the liberal. Forget
Rupert?
Cut this out.
I'm not going to cut anything out. Yes,
The guy
here
who's
we
paying
go.
all the protesters on our side, you know.
I don't
The guy who's paying
know.
us all big money to go out and protest.
I didn't get paid much when I went.
Yeah, I got big money. That's why I quit my job and I only do paid protests now.
It's like
I make 6 figures.
it's like those people who just get paid to sit in like the audiences and stuff. It's like, man, yeah. You'd think that would be a New York Times piece for sure if there was money exchanging hands with like the millions of people in the street. There were so many people at these protests.
All you need is one person to be like, "Hey, here's the check." You're like, yeah, here's the check. It's got his name on it.
I want to see the tax returns of every single person who went to a Black Lives Matter protest. And it's like, oh yeah, but that happens every year anyway. So what do we know? All right, let's get out of here. Patrick, at Pat Wise Live. Thank you very much for doing this, man.
Thanks, Tim.
This was
Timothy?
fun. Yes, Timothy, please.
Timmert.
Yes, Mom. Timothy. I know my mom's mad at me when she goes, Timmirth? Timmirth Wilmum Keek. Why is your room a mess? It's like, I don't know, Mom. I'm just here for a weekend. I'm 31 years old. Back off, Mom. I don't know.
Oh,
Timothy is never a good sign, but I do have friends who still call me Timmy. Anyway, this is getting bad. Thank you, Pat. That's it, guys. That's our show. Let me know what you think. I'll be back with a regular episode next Tuesday. Email the show, call the show, let me know. And the king stays king. Bye.